Good. Hello, everyone. We are starting in a few seconds. So I have a few minutes for technical and other remarks. We have it online. We have a recording, and it will be published later. We also have a live stream through our Facebook page. Some of you may be in a situation where you need to seek shelter, or you may experience disconnections from the electricity. Please take care of yourself. We will try to continue the Zoom meeting even if we got disconnected. For this reason, we are located in different places, and hopefully everything will go fine. Let's start our webinar. Today, it's an event. It's an event that we are organizing within a larger project supported by the International Renaissance Foundation in Ukraine. We are planning a series of different events, including trainings. However, this webinar is about the opportunities and experiences to do environmental advocacy in the EU. And our main goal is to provide information to my Ukrainian colleagues, non-governmental organizations, how they can participate in various EU processes, to advocate their environmental or climate concerns. We will also have an opportunity later to discuss the opportunities that the Ukrainian NGOs how they can cooperate with the EU colleagues. For this reason, we have invited 3 organizations which are active at the EU level in terms of environmental or climate issues. And these are the European Environmental Bureau, Justice and Environment Network, as well as CEE Bankwatch Network. Of course, there are other large groups. You may want to check so-called Green 10 group, which is a group of large EU associations working at the EU level on environmental issues. Today, we will have the representatives from these 3 large networks to share with us their experience and their vision and their, just to familiarize how they work and how Ukrainian NGOs can participate. We all know that given the candidate status of the Ukraine to the EU membership, there will be growing opportunities and needs to get involved with the EU machinery for the environmental NGOs. And the EU policy making, decision making is complex. It's new. It's not only about implementing the environmental acquis. Some groups like Justice and Environment can be very helpful to the Ukrainian NGOs in understanding specific pieces of environmental or climate change acquis. But also it's about trying to do the advocacy with the various EU institutions or in member states. That's the key background, I would say, to this webinar. Now I would like to give the floor to Olga Kvashuk. I hope she's with us. Olga is a program manager for Europe and the World program at the International Renaissance Foundation, who is supporting this webinar and the wider project that we have. Olga, the floor is yours if you are here. Olga Kvashuk.
Thank you, Andrei, and thank you for giving me a floor. I just want to say briefly that environmental and climate issues has always been among our priorities of International Renaissance Foundation. We always supported and continuing to support NGOs and think tanks, both at the national level and the local level. And for many years, we are cooperating with Swedish government on environmental and climate issues, and also with European Commission. Important work the previous years for us was a European Green Deal. We cooperated with your organization a lot in this sphere, and now we understand that it's very important to have this cooperation on different levels, to cooperate with government, with committees of Verkhovna Rada of the parliament, because we are living in the war with huge destructions and damages, and at the same time we have this candidate status for European to join European Union, and this sphere is needs to improve a lot, and it's time consuming, it's resources consuming, and we have a lot to cooperate also with our international partners, and I do appreciate that we have this topic of this webinar today, because how to advocate on international level, it's very important, because Ukraine, every day we need more and more support. It's not only about financial support, because we can have a lot of cooperations with EU funds, with EU different organizations, and I'm sure that you will give all these instruments and recommendations how to work with them, and this cooperation, this future cooperation will be very productive. So thank you for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Now, after these very short introductory remarks from Olga and from myself, I think we can proceed to the main speakers. And I see that Patricia is with us today already. Please confirm, Patricia, you are with us.
Yes. Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good, Patricia. So we will start now with three main interventions. The first one will be from Patricia Heidegger, who is the Deputy Secretary General of the European Environmental Bureau, for which I have a privilege to be the Vice President. Patricia is the Director for EU Governance, Sustainability, and Global Policies at the EEB. That's a high position, colleagues, at EEB, and at this position, she leads the EEB work on sustainable development and environmental justice, follows regional and international processes, and also supervises the teams at EEB working on European institutions governance, also environmental law and justice, economic transition, and regional and local and global policies. Now, Patricia, I am giving the floor to you to describe what EEB is, what special niche the EEB has at the EU in the EU environmental policy, let's say, machinery, and anything else you want to tell my Ukrainian colleagues about EEB, about how you think they should work with the European institutions, whatever experiences, advice you want to give. And of course, I encourage my Ukrainian colleagues to consider joining the EEB, either as associate members or as full members, because it's a great opportunity to have your say heard at the EU level. Patricia, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Andrei, so much. And hi, everybody. Really nice to meet you. So I brought a few slides, and I'll try to share them with you. So give me a sec until I get that up on the screen. So here we are. Oops. Okay, I think now you should see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, sorry, it's good?
Yes, it's good.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, thanks again, Andre, for inviting me, and really nice to meet all of you. So yeah, I thought I'll be talking a bit about well, who we are and why we're here as the EB, but also I'll talk a bit more about the role of NGOs and civil society in the decision making at the European level, and maybe just some reflections about that from my experience. I can also say a little bit more about the different institutions and how we work with them. But then I guess the other colleagues who will be speaking will also go maybe a little bit more into that. So I'll probably keep it short, and then if there's specific things that people want to know, then we can go in one or the other direction. So first, who are we as the EB? So the EB is only one of many or several networks of environmental organizations in Europe. We're the largest one in the sense that we have, we're kind of the broadest network of environmental organizations. So we bring together organizations that work on all different environmental issues and climate. We now have more than 190 members in 41 countries across the region. So in the EU, but also in the wider region, candidate countries and other countries in the region. And we just celebrated our 50th anniversary. And the reason for that is that the European community started in the early 1970s to come up with environmental laws at the European level. And that is when environmental organizations back in the early 70s decided they wanted to have a say in that and started the network at the European level. So we see ourselves as a unifying actor because our membership is very broad and diverse. Again, there's many other networks, and we also very closely work with them. I will talk about that as well. As the EB, we try to bring together organizations that work on different environmental issues, and also to make that our strength. So, for instance, to bring together people who work on chemicals and on agriculture and on climate, and to see how that all relates, and to bring these different areas of expertise together, and and thereby be a strong voice at the European level. Some of our member organizations are very small, maybe just with a few staff members or volunteers, and others are very big. So it's a really very diverse network. What are the issues that we work on? So, as I've said, we really work on, I believe, all the kind of pressing environmental issues, but also including work on kind of the economic transition, so on how macroeconomic policy, fiscal policy links to environment and climate. We also work on kind of horizontal environmental law and justice topics, on procedural rights. Andre is one of the very active experts in that. We also see how what's happening at the EU level links to wider processes in our region, and also to the international or the global to the global level. So yeah, again, we try to kind of make the link across all the different environmental and climate issues. But I'm not going to go into.
Sorry, Patricia,
Yes.
you may want to show the slides, because we are still at the very first slide.
Oh, I'm moving them forward, and I see them move, and I'm sorry. So what am I doing wrong? I'm sharing. I'm moving them forward. So,
we don't see the slideshow. We only see your.
Okay, I see. I'm just sharing again, and maybe it's going to work then. Sometimes it works. Wait.
I didn't realize that. I thought you are on the first slide still, but then I realized no, something is going wrong.
I'm sorry. Sometimes it's a mystery how that works. Okay, I'm just going to close everything else that I have here. Sorry.
I apologize. I think first you have to start the slideshow and then share, because then you're sharing the slideshow. If you share and then start the slideshow in the PowerPoint, then it's going to be blocked or frozen on the first slide.
Okay, let me see. I'm trying again.
As far as I...
Yeah.
And that's what my colleague Mykola Shlapak is suggesting too in the chat. That you first need to go to full screen and then share. So that means start the slideshow and then share.
So you see it now, right? But you see the first slide again?
No, only the first slide.
Yeah.
But that's the point. Start the slideshow on your computer and then share through Zoom. I know you don't use Zoom a lot.
We
But-
stopped using Zoom at some point, so I probably missed some of the developments around how to use it. So, I mean, I'm on my presentation and I
You
say
start the slideshow.
stage slow from beginning.
Yes, and then you share it through Zoom. And then switch to Zoom and share it. Yeah, now it's good. Now try changing the slides.
Hmm. Wait. Okay, now this doesn't seem to work. I'm sorry.
There should be small errors. Okay. You stopped sharing.
Yeah, I see, but because when I go to I mean the slideshow, then I mean I'm on full screen, and then how do I share on Zoom if I just see the full screen with my?
No, we just got it. I mean, you were just able to do it a minute ago.
Yeah, but I think I did it the way I did it
The issue
before.
is to start the slideshow and then share.
Yeah, but how do when I started the slideshow, then how do I share? Because then I just see my slides, and then how do I get?
Excuse me, Patricia, if I may help, it's not important whether you start slideshow before or not. It's more important what screen exactly you choose
Yeah.
to share the screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and it's important you choose the main screen of your computer, and then it will work.
Okay.
Alternatively, just send it to me and I will show it for you.
Okay, I'll try one more time. Otherwise, I'll.
Okay, now we see it. Try changing the slides.
It doesn't let me go to full screen now.
No, but we see your slide. Try changing the slide.
Okay, I'm now on the third slide.
No, we don't see it.
Okay, well, I'm really sorry. I've never had a problem sharing on Zoom, so that's a bit strange. So yeah, I sorry, I can send it to somebody, but I can't. Doesn't seem
Yes.
to work.
Send it to me and I'll show it in a second.
Okay, sorry. Maybe somebody else can.
Yeah,
can,
so maybe while we are doing this, we will switch to our next speaker, who is Shaba Kiss from Justice and Environment. Justice and Environment is a network which, to my knowledge, was originally created to promote compliance with the environmental acquis and climate change acquis in the EU member states. So that's more like a law-oriented network organization. So in any case, the Justice and Environment has evolved into, they do wider projects now. And Sheba is the best, of course, person to describe the niche that Justice and Environment is taking at the EU environmental policy level, because Shabakis is a coordinator of Justice Environment European Network of Environmental Organizations, and originally Shaba is from EMBLA, one of the oldest, probably, environmental public interest environmental law organizations in Eastern Europe. Shaba, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrei. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for all the laudations, and I think it's already too much. I don't think we deserve that much credit. However, yes, all what you said is true, but I think we should prove our usefulness, and also through experience and sharing our knowledge, I think we have to demonstrate that this is what we are doing is not just done, but it's also useful. I'm also making a try at sharing my screen. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes, try
Okay.
changing the slide.
Yes. And it changes?
Yeah, we can see it. Good.
Okay, great.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, a few words about justice and environment. Just to put this into a context, and I must tell you that I was very happy not to be the first speaker, because justice and environment's advocacy work is compared to EEB, Can Europe, or Bankwatch, or the other organizations. I would say it's less, it's minor. I will tell you at the end how we compensate this and what is the other area where we are working. But definitely we do some advocacy work on the EU level. However, compared to the other organizations, I would say this is rather supplementary and not major. So we were established in 2003 in the wake of the so-called EU 10 joining the European Union, which was 1st of May 2004. And logically, the founding members were from the Visegrad 4 regions. The Visegrad 4 regions, the 4 countries, are not fully represented anymore in our membership. Poland has left us many years ago, and we couldn't find an NGO which deals with environmental legal issues from Poland that would join our network. Currently, we have 15 members, 12 from the European Union, and as you can see on the map, we have quite a diverse coverage, which means some very important countries are missing. Italy, France, the Benelux states, or Northern Europe, the Scandinavian countries, or Finland. But we have at least a Baltic member. We cover the EU members of the Balkan Peninsula, and we have a member from Spain, so an old EU member. But as you can see, the core of the network is somewhere in the old Austro-Hungarian Empire. Somehow this area was very active in environmental legal matters. We also have members from outside the European Union, from Southeast Europe, like North Macedonia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we are very happy that Resources and Analysis Center, Andri's organization, joined us this year as an associate member, so we can very proudly cover the territory of Ukraine also with our membership. And we also hope that we will be able to cooperate. We are environmental legal NGOs, either public interest law offices or NGOs which deal with other issues plus environmental law. The best example is Slovenia, where the NGO is dealing with major civil society issues like the registration or the civic space issues, or Slovakia, where our member organization is very much into human rights, minority rights. But apart from that, they also deal with the environmental law. So there's always a unifying factor. And we started to deal with SLAP cases lately. This is coming up. What we mean by SLAP cases is when corporations or state institutions start lawsuits against public participation to silence the critical voices. And this is a very hot and upcoming issue in the EU, but also for the civil society to keep pace with the developments. When you look at the next item on the list, which says transposition analysis, court cases, case studies, position papers, strategic complaints, most of them are legal, not advocacy. Of course, we don't want to start now, probably, here, a very academic and philosophical debate about what we mean by advocacy. By the way, we didn't have a definition. So if you very broadly approach this, strategic lawsuits, cases, legal papers can also serve advocacy purposes. A law, the application of law, or maybe the putting the attention, the focus on legal issues can also serve advocacy purposes. So it's not only a campaign or an open letter or a referendum which can be used, but also cases. In that sense, we are also doing more advocacy than I said in the beginning. But these are mostly legal issues. Our major donors are the EU LIFE program, the EU citizens, oh my goodness, CERV is short for citizens, I don't know, rights and values program. I don't know the E, really. If you can find it in the meantime, I'm grateful. The Central European Initiative, the Visegrad Fund, and lately the European Climate Foundation. So what are the major issues we're dealing with? To put it into
it's equality.
Equality, yes, equality. Thank you for Googling it. So the major issues we're dealing with are the following: the Aarhus Convention, the environmental assessments, and climate. The Aarhus Convention, I don't think it has to be introduced for you. Major international convention dealing with participatory rights, including information, participation, and justice. Here, we mostly deal with access to justice. Why? Because access to information seems to be I would say, the easiest and the less problematic area. Public participation, I would say, is the least legal. It's mostly about how you communicate your standpoint in a policymaking or a decision-making procedure. However, that's probably the best area for advocacy, because that's where the different opinions collide and where you have a real conflict with the decision makers. But we deal with access to justice rather, because we're lawyers. And very lately, we started to pick up state aid issues. Just a footnote, state aid is when government gives money to business enterprises in order to help them out from certain maybe crisis situations. This happens maybe in the coal industry, coal mining industry, or fisheries. However, the state aid can also serve very illegitimate purposes, or can also work against the environmental objectives. And NGOs claim that there should be access to justice against decisions of state aid. Why? Because we want to influence where the money goes. And it's a very good example that we've worked a lot on access to justice matters, and the corporate sector, the business sector, was not interested. I don't remember any time in the last, I don't know, 15 years when corporations were very active in access to justice matters. Immediately when the state aid issue came up, and corporations started to be very active. Maybe chemicals is the other area where corporates are very heavily involved. But when the state aid came up, they started to be forming opinion platforms, etc. So they were very active and they are active in expressing their opinion, not to give the NGOs legal standing. In environmental assessments, in the past, we also did advocacy for specific projects. I remember that, like, I don't know, 19 or 18 years ago, we were sitting in Brussels as much younger environmental lawyers talking to DG Transport, the European Commission's transport agency, not to finance the Brno-Vienna highway because the original path was going through some protected areas. And we were sitting next to our Czech colleagues representing an NGO or a network covering the Visegrad region back then only. And so that was also an advocacy when you directly engage in discussion with decision makers in specific projects. Well, currently we are rather talking about systemic issues, like we complain about the transposition of European legislation into national laws, or how the Water Framework Directive, which should defend the quality of waters within the European Union, quality and quantity, should not be weakened, etc. So we are rather not entering into discussions with specific projects. And in terms of the climate, we are focusing on the national energy and climate plans, which have to include pledges, promises of national governments, how they want to reach the net zero status. But we also do climate litigation in our home countries to more or less to different extents, of course. And if you think that this is a purely legal thing, then we are not doing advocacy. But I think climate litigation is typically something that on the surface it's legal, but when we look behind, it's more advocacy. It's not about getting a good decision at the court. It's bringing the issue up, keeping it on the surface, and pushing it and making sure that there is no tool that we're not using for climate protection. So just a short list about the advocacy tools we use. We normally, as Justice and Environment, we don't have own campaigns. We are rather joining other NGOs, especially the European Environmental Bureau, Patricia, in their advocacy campaigns. But we also write letters to the Commission staff and expert groups of the European Commission, explaining our standpoints in a strategic complaint or a position paper. The title of this meeting is about the advocacy in Europe, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So I also take the Aarhus Convention, the United Nations administration, into this context as part of Europe. So we normally not just work with the European Commission, but with the United Nations Aarhus Convention Secretariat. And we also write letters to the Compliance Committee, which, as you probably know, monitors and oversees the implementation of the Aarhus Convention in the parties to the Aarhus Convention. I think it's now 47 countries, if I'm not, after Belarus leaving the convention or exiting the convention, but an African country, Guinea-Bissau, entering or joining the convention. I think what is the best is having meetings in Brussels, but also meetings in Geneva if you are dealing with the Aarhus Convention issues with the UNEC. That's a very good tool, an advocacy tool. And we also have to know that it's not only the European Commission, but also the European Parliament that has a very relevant role in defining European policies. So you can write letters to the members of the European Parliament, or as we lately did in our countries, MEP candidates just before the European elections, because as you probably know or follow this, on the 9th of June, there will be a big Europe-wide election of the European Parliament members. I think online presentations can also be very well used for advocacy. Give you an example, we had a project on access to justice in environmental matters. We had a big online conference in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and we invited Commission representatives, and the whole meeting started to be like a debate over the implementation of the Aarhus Convention in the European Union. So it was, on the surface, it's an online presentation and a closing online conference of a project, but it became an advocacy tool trying to convince the Commission why things are wrong, what they thought. And what is the best is to have a person in Brussels. That's what we don't have. unfortunately. We very much feel it's disadvantage not to have a person in Brussels, not to have that personal feeling. And I know that everybody thinks that online tools have replaced personal encounters. That's not the case. You really have to have the personal presence. That's why EEB is much better in advocacy than us. Skipping the last three, I just because I said that we are mostly dealing with legal issues, the legal tools we use: freedom of information requests, either to the Commission or national governments, request for internal review. This is a specific European Union legal instrument when you ask the European Commission to reconsider its standpoint and you go against a so-called administrative act. If the Commission refuses your request for internal review, you can go to the European Court. Oh, unfortunately, only European Union members, state NGOs and citizens. But we also did this. We went to the EU Court. You can also write to the European Commission letters suggesting infringement procedures. So the Commission should go against its member states because things are not going well. I give you just an anecdote. Yesterday, we got a letter from the Commission saying that your request for an infringement procedure will be considered. And I was checking, like, I don't remember having it sent lately. And I said, oh my God, it was in 2019 and I got a response now, which means don't attach too many hopes to this procedure. But what you can do also as a Ukrainian citizen or Ukrainian NGO is writing communications to the compliance committee in Geneva, because that's not attached or not connected to your EU membership. And you can also, of course, complain about the implementation of the Aarhus Convention in Ukraine and, surprise, in other countries as well. So you're not limited to complain about the Ukrainian legislation or practice. And what we also do, because as I mentioned in the beginning, we are national public interest environmental law offices, we do national level court cases, including climate litigation. And just to give you an example, in Hungary, where I work, and I do apologize that I'm from Hungary for the obvious reasons. And I thank Andriy for not saying that I'm from Hungary. And I'm not gonna tell you why I'm apologizing. You know the obvious things. Is that in Hungary, we asked the Ministry of Energy to give us the National Energy and Climate Plan public consultation document. And they refused. And we went to the court and they refused. And we went to another court and they said they go to the Supreme Court. And we went to the Supreme Court. And at the Supreme Court, the Minister of Energy said, oh, but we didn't have a public consultation on the National Energy and Climate Plan, which means they obviously were breaching the European legislation, not having a public consultation. This is also, I would say this is a legal case. This is what we do. But once we published it in the online media and social media, it was obvious that it's also an advocacy tool, naming and shaming the Ministry of Energy in Hungary, at least, that they, again, do not follow European legislation and do not have public participation in policymaking. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope what I said was understandable, although I was speaking very fast, trying to save space and time for Patricia also. And you can find our links here: email, website, Facebook page, and also Twitter, or how it's called now, X. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Sheba. You know, we will have some time at the end, quite some time, for questions from the participants. If there will be no questions, I will certainly have a follow-up questions, because at least there are two major relevant aspects that I grasped from your presentation. But first, the issues you are working on are fully relevant for Ukraine. We just had an NECP, National Energy and Climate Plan, developed by the government with the consultations, public consultations. Of course, we work on Aarhus. What else did you mention? Aarhus
Climate.
and climate. Climate. We had
assessment, environmental assessment.
and EIA and SEA are, you know, the main tools the NGOs are using here. So it's all very relevant. But the second major issue that you just briefly mentioned, and again, if you have time, I will ask you that question. You mentioned that justice and environment was, sorry, confirm my speaking language. What is that? You mentioned that justice and environment was established at the eve of accession of the Eastern European countries in 2003, while they acceded in 2004. And I am, for our situation, I think it would be very interesting to learn why and how it was, you know, why did you organize yourself? I mean, in a group, how did it help the accession and post-accession reforms in the country? You know, what was that role that the just environment was meant to play at that time? Because we are not yet there, okay? We don't know the accession date, but we are going there. So you may think about that while I'm switching now to Patricia, and I have the presentation of Patricia, and I'll try to show it. So tell me, Patricia, whether you can see this presentation.
I can see it, yes. The first slide, if you now go
Okay,
to
I will then try sliding. Okay, now good?
Yes, you can go
Go
on.
ahead.
Yes.
Good. So
Yes.
go ahead. Patricia Hediger, the Vice Secretary General or Deputy Secretary General of the European Environmental Bill. The floor is yours.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. And sorry again for my technical or my digital illiteracy with Zoom. So yeah, so I mean, I already introduced you to the EB, so you can also go to the next slide, Andre, and again the next one. These ones I already covered, like yeah, so maybe I can pick up and just yeah, say again that as a network, we really tried to bring together all the different aspects of environment, climate, with yeah, the legal approach, but also kind of, you know, linking to the wider question of economic transition, and also linking what's happening at the EU level with what's happening in the wider region and to the global level. And I think that's kind of what makes the EB unique, that we're such a broad network. If you go to the next slide, Andre. Yeah, and then I wanted to just, I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of our theory of change, but just to tell you that, I mean, we are a membership organization. So our positions and the kind of demands that we present through policy proposals or through whatever form at the EU level, they're really kind of jointly designed and discussed by our members through the working groups. So we really try to be the voice of the members towards the European institutions or whatever institution we work with. Working on EU policy processes is really the core of what we do. But then again, as I said before, of course, we link that to some processes that happen at the international level as well. But also, of course, what's happening at the national level, because EU policies are, of course, also shaped or co-decided by the governments of the member states, and the member states have to finally implement them. So we really work at these different levels of governance. Yeah, implementation is a big challenge because the EU is producing a lot of new legislation on environment and climate, or is constantly reviewing legislation. And of course, it's not always a given that our governments at member state then also implement these immediately. Sometimes there's also, of course, you know, funding issues or issues around governance structures or the capacity of authorities. So yeah, implementation is also a key element. We also try to link our work on environmental issues to the wider discussion around just transition. So how to make sure that the ecological transition is also creating opportunities for people, well, in our region, but also globally. That also, and I'll talk about this a little bit more. I mean, we also really try to work very closely also with organizations from the social justice movement, sometimes also the trade unions, to make sure that our, let's say, green or ecological demands are not, you know, happening within a vacuum that's not connected to, for instance, questions of social justice. So if you go to the next slide, Andre. Thank you. I also wanted to say a bit more about the coalitions that we work in. So at the EU level, there's of course a lot of organizations that work on environmental issues. And we generally have a very good, you know, coordination and collaboration between these organizations. There's one coordination structure which is called the Green 10 or the Green 10, G10. Which brings together 10 of the environmental networks, organizations that are present and that they're trying to shape environmental policy at the EU level. So the EEB is one of them. We're also hosting the coordinator of the Green 10 network, and there's a rotating presidency. And it's a very good coordination mechanism to coordinate activities. You know, sometimes, of course, there's also controversies, and we're not always entirely on the same page, but generally speaking, I think we have a very good coordination in the sense that, you know, all our directors meet once a month and we more or less know what the other organizations are doing, and we try to join forces or at least not, you know, undermine each other's work at the EU level. Go to the next slide. Then, as I said before, I mean, we don't only work with environmental organizations, but we also try to work with other networks from within the environmental network, but also beyond. So, I mean, this is just some of them, and I'm not going to explain all of them, but we, for instance, work through a network called SDG Watch, which is a very broad network of civil society organizations from all different constituencies working on long-term sustainable development. We work with the We All network, which is the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, which is more, you know, focused on macroeconomics, economic transition. So just to mention two examples. So we really try to connect our network to other civil society networks. If you go to the next slide. Then our membership. So we have members in all of the current EU member states. We also have members in nearly all of the other countries in the region, including all of the candidate countries. I think at the moment we're only missing a member from Bosnia and Montenegro. We have partners there with whom we work in joint projects, but we don't have full members from those countries. So we more or less cover the whole region. Yeah, as I said, with now 190 plus members. If you go to the next slide. And as a network, we've also always been working with environmental organizations in the countries that were candidate countries to join the EU ever since the network was started. Of course, yeah, but there were different moments in the history where new members joined the EU, and before or in that process of joining the EU, we always try to build well, our network in these countries, but also support environmental organizations in these countries to use the process of accession to the EU to accelerate the development of good environmental policies, you know, to become stronger watchdogs of that accession process, and also to exchange experiences between different candidate countries about how to best use the process to yeah, see better and stronger policies on what you're working on. If you go to the next slide. So coming a bit to kind of the Brussels space, it's a very crowded space, and there's a lot of different actors trying to influence what the European Union is doing. So of course, in the middle of that, you have the so-called institutional triangle. I mean, there's more institutions, but the three main institutions are the European Parliament, which is the directly elected parliament of all EU citizens. And we're just now coming very close to the next elections early in June. Then there's the European Commission, which is a bit like the government or the executive part of the European Union, and the Council, which is basically like a second chamber in many of the national democratic systems. And these are the representatives of the member state governments. And the European Parliament and the Council together are the two co-legislators. But around this institutional triangle, you really have a flurry of actors. Nobody really knows how many lobbyists and companies and organizations are here in Brussels trying to influence EU level policy making. There's different figures, but it's many 10,000s of people who are here trying to shape EU policy. So of course, civil society or NGOs, which I put at the kind of left lower corner of this little graph, is only we are only a part of all those different organizations and actors trying to shape EU policies. There's a lot of NGOs here, also a lot of internationally active organizations, then the regional networks like ourselves, but also individual organizations like Greenpeace, for instance, have the individual offices here in Brussels. But then of course you have kind of the EU level media who are shaping the discourse. You have a lot of individual companies that are present here, and that are sometimes very visible and very present in certain processes around new laws. I mean, for instance, the kind of tech companies, IT, and I mean communications. They are one of the biggest. I mean, they have the biggest lobby budget amongst different companies. The chemical industry, for instance, is very present at the EU level. And then, of course, you also have the associations, or the trade associations, bringing together different businesses that are present. Again, Business Europe, for instance, or CEFIC, the Association of Chemical Industry, are very powerful actors here. Then, of course, you have kind of a lot of different consultants and law firms and think tanks that are sometimes, you know, working with or for the other actors to support their lobby efforts. You also have the third countries, some of which are very present, trying to shape EU level policy. And then, of course, you also have the trade unions with different EU level federations of national trade unions. So there's a lot of different actors out there. And if you go to the next slide, I wanted to say a few more things about the role of NGOs in the EU kind of process. So if we look at kind of the legal framework that allows us as NGOs or civil society organizations to influence EU level policy, the legal framework is very meager. There's not much there, actually. There is one famous article in the Treaty of the European Union, Article 11, which says that the institutions shall maintain an open, transparent, and regular dialogue with representative associations and civil society. And then there's another article that says that the institutions need to conduct their work as openly as possible. But, you know, that's quite kind of abstract, and that has never really filled with, you know, a lot of more guidance or definition of what it means to maintain an open, transparent, and regular dialogue with civil society. So together with other civil society organizations, we're also working for a European strategy on civil society, and also kind of a better definition of civic dialogue. Because basically what is the reality is that we do have a lot of access as NGOs to European institutions. We can build relationships with members of the European Parliament. We can build relationships with experts working in the Commission, all the way up to the Commissioner. You know, we do have regular meetings with commissioners. We can build relationships with government representatives in the different council formations. But at the end of the day, it always depends on our ability to build these relationships. It depends on our resources to build these relationships. and to have staff working on that. And it also depends on the individual in those institutions, how open they are towards civil society. So it's not very strongly based on a very clearly defined legal framework, and what kind of the role of civil society is. Of course, as an environmental organization and for environmental matters, the Aarhus Convention that Jaba has already mentioned, of course, gives us the right to participate and the access to information and access to justice on environmental matters. But that doesn't, of course, cover the whole range of decisions that are taken at the European level, and it doesn't really clarify what it means in practice for all civil society organizations to have an open, transparent, and regular dialogue. So that's something we constantly have to kind of fight for and make sure that this space stays open. If you go to the next slide. And as I said, I mean, there are a lot of civil society actors that are present in Brussels and are very actively trying to shape EU-level policies. They're not just the environmental organizations, there's a lot of human rights organizations, social justice organizations, and their networks like the European Anti-Poverty Network, for instance, or the European Women's Lobby, the Social Platform, the European Youth Forum. There are a lot of development organizations that are present here, the humanitarian organizations, and then also more kind of specialized organizations and networks. If you go to the next slide. And then there's also different structures. I mean, there's international NGOs with an office at the EU level. There's European networks like ourselves. And then there's umbrella organizations like the G10 that I mentioned. So why am I saying this? I mean, I'm just trying to explain kind of the complexity of the landscape and also kind of how full this space is. But the good news is that there are a lot of kind of civil society actors here, and there's a lot of opportunities to network and to collaborate with organizations, with environmental organizations, but also with other organizations like youth organizations or women's rights organizations or anti-poverty organizations, for instance. So just to basically make you aware of the wealth of organizations that are working here and that could all be potential partners with what you want to do. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, and then just to come back to basically the landscape of the environmental organizations here. So these are not all the environmental organizations that are present here, but these are some that we work with. So you see kind of, I mean, there's the EB, and some of our members also are also based here or have a presence here. So for instance, our German member NABU also has staff here in Brussels. Then there's the G10 network with the 10 organizations that have a presence here, and some of you are also affiliated with those. And then there's yet other organizations like Conservation International or others. Also more and more international environmental organization or environmental organizations from other parts of the world, like American NGOs, are settling in Brussels to have an influence on EU-level policy. So there's a lot of environmental organizations that are already here and that are all potential partners and supporters of your work. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, and I'll just say a very few words about the different institutions and how we work with them, and then I'll wrap up. So, I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of how the European institutions work. It's quite complex, and also the process of the legislative cycle is a quite complex one. I mean, I guess what's important to know is, I mean, the three core institutions, the European Parliament, the Council, and the European Commission, they are really at the heart of decision making at the European level. But that doesn't mean that there are not other organizations, not other institutions, that could potentially also be very important for you. So, for instance, the Economic and Social Committee, which consists of representatives of the employers, the employees, and civil society from all of the member states, is often also a very good forum to put new topics on the agenda. Their members can be very good partners in hosting and organizing conferences. They have access to the decision makers who then come to these events. They can provide a free venue. So yeah, working with the EEC, for instance, can be one way forward to kind of give more visibility to your topics or your issues. If you go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, there's some, okay, just yeah, click through it, okay. Yeah, you can go to 2 more. I'm gonna skip 2 for the sake of time. 1 more. So yeah, so just kind of to put it very simply, I mean, it's the European Commission that is the only institution that has the right to initiative. So any new future law has to come from the European Commission, which means in a process, they're always the first go-to institution, and only then, once a proposal is out there, then we have to kind of work with members of the parliament and with the member states in the council to, you know, in the negotiations and the final adoption. But the starting point is always to work with the European Commission and yeah, to advocate, you know, for a new initiative. If you go to the next one. And before the European Commission, you know, proposes any kind of new laws or reviews of laws, there's often a kind of an initiative or yeah, proposals or demands that come from citizens through yeah, through campaigns, also through a European Citizens Initiative, for instance. And through civil society organizations that put things on the agenda. And for the European Commission, basically you are free to contact any expert. I mean, on the website of the different Commission Directorate Generals, you will find the names of the people in charge of different topics. They all have the same email address. So it's very it's quite easy to kind of find out how to contact them. Yeah, and you're free to do so and to try and make contact and also to try and arrange meetings. You can, of course, also do so through contacting some of us. I mean, environmental organizations that are already present here that already might have contacts to the people that you're looking for. But it's all about yeah, making contact and building networks to the right people, the people that are working on the issues that you're interested in. And the same is true for the parliament, where of course you can approach parliamentarians directly. If you want to kind of see and meet parliamentarians in the parliament, then you and your organization have to be registered in the so-called transparency register. This is also becoming stricter and stricter, also because there were corruption scandals in the European Parliament, as you probably know. So it's becoming more and more difficult, and maybe that's also rightly so, to yeah, be able to meet parliamentarians if you or your organization are not registered in the transparency register. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, you can click a few more times. So here you see again the different institutions. So there's a lot of different ways, and that's going to be my last slide, how to influence decision-making at EU level. It really depends on where the topic that you're interested in is at. But as I said, I mean, it usually starts with trying to put things on the agenda through organizing meetings, conferences, you know, publishing papers, sending letters, organizing workshops. That can be done, you know, through NGOs. It can be done in collaboration already, for instance, with, you know, parliamentarians or with the Economic and Social Committee. Yeah, to basically create some visibility for your topic and to kind of, yeah, motivate the Commission to take an initiative. There's also sometimes the opportunity to become an expert in different high-level working group that the Commission is organizing, or there's different forms of working groups and kind of consultation bodies. So that can also be a very good way to have a say. Maybe the most difficult thing to influence is actually the decision making in the European Council, because there at the moment we have 27 member states who are taking decisions, sometimes with a majority, sometimes in unanimity. And of course, there, if you want to influence decision making there, you need a lot of resources because you need to work with different, or you need to approach different governments and convince them of your standpoint. So that's often a challenge for NGOs in terms of resources and accessibility. But you can of course also decide that you focus only on one of the institutions. But yeah, again, there's a lot of organizations already here in Brussels who are also willing to help and explain processes and share their contacts and also exchange on strategies and the right way of engaging with different institutions. So yeah, just make use of the fact that many of us are already here and have certain experience, and we're all happy to advise and help if you have questions. So I think I'll leave it there. So there's also more space for our you can there's a few more slides, but we can leave them, and I'm happy for you to share the presentation. If you're interested, I can also encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter, which is called Meta. It's published once a week usually, and it's very I would say entertaining short articles about policy developments around environment, climate, and related topics at the EU level. So yeah, if you want to follow more what's happening here, I can recommend that you subscribe to our newsletter. I think it's a really helpful source of information. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for this eye-opening, I would say, eye-opening presentation describing the Brussels bubble, the various institutions, and the environmental NGOs and other actors who are active in Brussels. Unlike Justice and Environment, you do have a person in Brussels, and you have like a 90 staff persons present in Brussels. So you have a huge capacity to get engaged in these various forums and stages of policy making or law drafting at the EU level. Again, thank you so much. I mean, this was an overwhelming presentation about the Brussels bubble, I would say. Thank you so much. Now, let's go to our last speaker. I stopped the presentation, right? Okay. So our next and last speaker is Valeria Izhik, who is here representing the CE Bankwatch network, where she is the EU policy officer on Ukraine reconstruction. Indeed, some of the big organizations have started working on Ukraine, let's say, related issues. I am not aware of the organizations who work on accession at the EU level, but accession by Ukraine. But I do know organizations who are trying to help Ukraine to build back greener, and Valeria is representing one of such organizations. Valeria, if you are with us, the floor is yours, and I'll be glad to hear your input today.
Thank you, Andriy. Hello, everyone, and thank you to Patricia for her previous presentation. I will mostly build on that because we've worked with Patricia since the beginning of the advocacy on Ukraine's Ukraine facility, and she instructed us a lot on how to build the case around Ukraine facility together with Tomek from WWF. So it was a very crucial time for us in Brussels. So I'm the Ukrainian who actually works in Brussels, and Bankwatch happily has also Brussels office. So when the decision was taken on creating a team working on Ukraine's reconstruction in Brussels, we've built the case on the experience of already existing team, which has been working with European facilities, European funds for quite a while, So it wasn't work from scratch. Mostly because Bankwatch is also a long-standing organization, was created in 90s, and is the one of the main watchdogs for international financial institutions. So it's EBRD and EIB, but also European Union when it comes to European funding. So we're talking here about cohesion funds, we're talking about just transition funds, recovery and resilience fund, and now it's also Ukraine facility regulation. I'll say a few words about Parliament, Commission and the Council just to tailor it a little bit more to our Ukrainian case so that you colleagues can indeed influence the decisions from whenever you want, even though it's really helpful to be in Brussels, you can still do your job, just knowing to whom you need to approach. So the Parliament, as it was already mentioned, is the most democratic institution. The elections will happen on the 6th till 9th of June. And what's important to know about Parliament is that there is already a fixed list of MEPs, members of the European Parliament, who are working specifically on Ukraine. It's called Friends of Ukraine. This list is not public. You will not find it if you Google it. It's known by Ukrainian representation in Brussels and by those Ukrainians who work in the European Parliament and the European Commission. And it's led by Polish MEP Wojciechowski, who will stay in the European Parliament. He's representative of the ECR, which is not the most democratic and green party in the European Parliament, but still has a very strong stance on Ukraine. There is also United for Ukraine group, which was created by Andrius Kubilius. It's an MEP from the European People's Party, which is the biggest party in the European Parliament. EPP is also not a green party per se. Moreover, they were blocking some legislative profiles that were particularly important for the green community in the European Union. But if you want to phase in some topic on Ukraine, including Ukraine's reconstruction, including EU accession negotiations, it's a good MEP to reach out. Moreover, a person who is responsible for Ukrainian questions in his team is a Ukrainian assistant. So please use this channel for making public events in Brussels or pushing your topics, presenting your reports, and basically introducing anything you would like to introduce in the European Parliament. I would like to say a few words about resolutions. So, as you already understood, the European Parliament cannot. Resolutions are not legally binding documents. It's not directive. It's not regulation. They can raise up topics, but they cannot fix problems as it can be done through directives and regulations. But I would really recommend to those who want to again raise some issue on the political agenda of the European Union to work with members of the European Parliament to put some important topic on the political agenda. For instance, we were trying to do this, and not lots of Ukrainian organizations tried to do this with ecocide through the resolution, which didn't work out eventually because it's a very tricky issue because ecocide term used for Kakhovka Dam could have been used for other cases. So European Parliament shied away from this word. But if, for instance, you will manage to put on the resolution call for the European Commission to pay particular attention to this, that, then you can come to the European Commission, to the DG that you're interested in working with, and say, look, there is a resolution of the European Parliament that says that you need to investigate how to ensure that, for instance, there are less loopholes in the sanction package on coal, or price caps for oil, and then whatever topic you'd like to raise. So it makes sense to work with the Parliament and to have your word fixed in the resolution. And then you can use this resolution to go to the Council of the European Union, to member states, to their representations in Brussels, or you can go to the Commission to follow up on the political statements fixed in the resolution. A few very practical advices from me. If you want to write to the European Parliament, please send your emails at 8:45 or 8:50 a.m. because by the time they assistants open their mailboxes, there is a bunch of emails, and it's better to have your email on the top. So it's just one tip how the assistants work. The second one, I would suggest, if you want to follow the news in the Parliament and to understand who are your main MEPs to work with, especially in the Greens group, I would suggest to subscribe to the media, The Parliament. It's called The Parliament. Basically, all the news about different MEPs, what they're doing, what their interests, they are there. For now, I can tell that from the Greens group, we've been working with Viola von Kramon from Germany, from Greens. We're not sure she will stay in the European Parliament in the next mandate, because she's quite low on the list compared to the last elections. But we might still have another MEP who is not Greens. He's from Volt. It's a very small but very progressive European political party. He has been working on Ukraine reconstruction, and he picked up lots of the proposals on green agenda, on stronger wording in Ukraine's reconstruction facility. Most probably he will stay. It's his name is Patricia, help me. Very difficult pronunciation of Damian Bolslager. Bolslager. Yeah. Sorry for my German. Most probably he will stay. He's a good guy. His team is very, very responsible and very responsive to Ukrainian civil society questions and requests. So please use him for your outreach in the European Commission on green related issues. Then Commission. So since when the European Commission rolled out their first draft of Ukraine facility regulation, I've started to work with DG NEAR Section E, which is a specifically created section in DG NEAR working on Ukraine's facility, Ukraine's reconstruction. They have 3 units. And they are doing different things for environmental agenda in Ukraine. It's better to approach Unit 2. You can find organigram of the engineer section E on the website of the European Commission, and I'm sure that you've been in touch already with some desk officers there who are responsible for environmental issues in Ukraine facility regulation. It's Mariuka, she's Finnish desk officer. She previously worked in the civil society of Finland, so she's quite responsive. She tells a lot of nitty-gritty. She explains a lot of nitty-gritty elements about Ukraine facility regulation. So it's good to be in touch with her. You can also find her on the website of the European Commission. If I can again give you some personal advice, professional advice in how to work with them, always double check between different desk officers what they say, because what we've noticed since we started working with the junior, sometimes they say things that vary depending on the desk officer you ask, especially on Ukraine facility regulation. So please make sure to have 3, 4, or 5 contacts in the engineer and to double check, to cross check what they say, what they tell to you. Of course, invite them to your events, build personal contact with them, because lots of things depend on your personal connection with those desk officers. If they invite you only to the official meetings, or they can have lunch with you and speak up more freely with you on different questions that you might have, and then tell you things that they say, please, this is not for the record, but blah, 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 blah. And this is how you get those insights, especially when you come with some visits to Brussels. Please use this opportunity to have coffee with them for lunch or anything. I would suggest to also follow the informal initiative that EEB, WWF, and Bankwatch started with the DGNIR. It's informal dialogue now. It's only me who is coordinating this dialogue, but it's basically the meetings with the DGNIR section E, where we discuss all the questions that bother us. The last time was quite a while ago, but the next one will be most probably in July or end June, and we will discuss the questions regarding Ukraine facility. Basically, how are they going to implement do no significant harm principle? How they're going to implement do no harm principle? How are they going to quantify 20% earmarking within Ukraine facility regulation? Please follow this initiative. Any announcements will most probably come through Build Back Better newsletters. So this is just the way to follow what DGNIR is doing on Ukraine facility regulation. Then I would like to say a few words about the Council of the European Union. As Patricia said, it's the most difficult institution to advocate, and happily we have EEB who are following the presidencies, and basically if I personally have questions about who we need to approach regarding Ukraine facility in the next presidency, I would most probably go to Patricia to ask this question. So use the network that we have, and those colleagues who particularly focus on particular institutions. Finally, about 20% green earmarking in Ukraine facility regulation. So far, this was our case of advocacy in the EU bubble, which was the most successful one. And I want to give you a few tips based on those lessons that I've learned from this journey of advocacy. So the most ambitious institution when it comes to speaking to Ukraine civil society was the European Parliament. And if not European Parliament, we wouldn't see all those proposals in the text that was then voted by the Council. I particularly talk about Aarhus Convention. I talk the no significant harm to no harm principle. I'm talking about 20% earmarkings that we faced in because we've examined those green earmarkings in other EU funding, which is the Transition Fund, Recovery and Resilience Fund, and basically Ben Watch built a case for Ukraine how this green earmarking can work in Ukraine facility regulation. It wasn't in the initial text, so the Commission was actually against 20% earmarking, strictly against, and it's because European Parliament and Nordic countries insisted on having this 20%. We wanted 37, like in the Recovery and Resilience Fund, but they lowered down the threshold and made it 20%, earmarking. We have this number, which is better than nothing, but it was the Parliament who was the most persistent in having this clause in the final text. So I prefer to work with the European Parliament than with anyone else. The Commission can take a note of what you say, but eventually it's a many hands problem. So if you speak to one desk officer from the DG NEAR, you don't have certainty if what you said will actually end up in the final text, because the hierarchy in the European Commission is very complicated. It's too many people. In the European Parliament, if you work with a very active MEP, for us it was Viola von Kramon and Damian Bolslager from Volt, you can at least be sure that they will be heard during the institutional negotiations, and they will do their best to leave the mark in the final text. Surprisingly, for Ukraine facility regulation, it was also EPP MEP. Oh my God, what's his name? I have forgotten. So I will Google it now. So we worked, the main reporter for Ukraine facility regulation was an MEP from European People's Party. And European People's Party is not the same as Green Party, so they're central right. But for some miracle, Mikhail Galler, right? Mikhail Galler was the main reporter for Ukraine facility regulation, and Mikhail Galler surprisingly picked up all the proposals, all the green proposals that we provided to the European Parliament. So even though he is central right, and ideally it should be Viola and Damian who table our proposals, we had two parties who tabled our proposals. So don't shy away from EPP and ECR, because usually those MEPs who work on Ukraine, they don't distinguish between different messages that you apply, that you ask them to table on your behalf. So if they think that it will be helpful for Ukrainian civil society, then they will table your amendments, even though EPP is not the one who will most probably be the most active on the green agenda in Ukraine. So be mindful about this discrepancy when it comes to Ukraine case and European case. So do work with not only green MEPs. And now, after the 10th of June, we will already have the list of those MEPs who we can approach. I think that Bankwatch, our team will make this analysis, and will make sure that our friends and partners, colleagues, know about our analysis of the new parliament. I think I will stop here, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Valeria, thank you so much for these very practical tips and hints, how tailored to the Ukrainian, let's say, NGOs and issues, in particular regarding working with the European Parliament. Indeed, they've been more open to raise the Ukrainian issues, and some of the groups, not necessarily environmental, like you mentioned, EPP, okay, but they are more open to work on Ukraine. But there are green groups which are open to hear environmental issues like ecocide, which was not per se integrated into the new environmental crime directive, but it was used by the European Parliament in relation to the Kakhovka Dam. Now, I invite all the participants, if you have any follow-up questions, or you want to share something briefly with us on your experience working with the EU institutions or EU policy processes, please raise your hand. And okay, we have one hand right now, and because we still have some time to have a brief discussion. Tamara, so you are the first one.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to add just that there are two platforms, pre-European platforms, civil society platform of Eastern Partnership and EU Ukraine civil society platform. And they both are also good tools to prove our messages and to work with European structures. Ukraine EU civil society platform is mirror part of so our Ukrainian part of the platform is mirror part of European structure, and European structure is European Economic and Social Committee. So we have direct way to ECOSOC and work with people from ECOSOC already during many years, and now there is a new initiative from ECOSOC to have enlargement countries members. So we representatives of this Ukraine EU platform, we are this ECM enlargement candidates countries members. So we work together now, started from this year, work together with ECOSOC. It is for me, it is not clear enough how this work will be, but it's already something existing. So we made to use these possibilities as well. And another point I would like to stress, our organization Green Dossier is not a member of EEB. I don't know why, because we for many years trying to we want for many years to be a member of EEB, and don't do anything for this. But we work very closely with this organization. We have all this information, meta and email information. So we participate in many campaigns which are arranged by European organizations. And we also, I mean, Green DC is member of IFAM Europe. IFAM Europe and IFAM International closely work with EB as well. And in the issue of eco-labeling, for example, is interesting for our organization, and it is also interesting for EB and for IFAM Europe as well. And we provide campaigns together with using information from these organizations and participate in campaigns. And another and we also try to use different platforms to promote our messages, our issues, and of course we work a lot with Aarhus network. It's quite interesting to promote, for example, eco-labeling or green claims issue on different platforms, like through EB and through Aarhus meetings as well. We do this, and I think it is also a possibility to combine different approaches, different spaces to promote our issues. Thank you.
Tamara, thank you so much. I see there are no more hands, but we still have one question in the air, which I asked Shaba at the beginning. What was the core mission of justice and environment at the time of the accession by Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, etc.?
Thank you. Just as a reflection to what Patricia and Valeria said, I think now it's obvious that it's impossible for one person at least to cover everything that relates to this landscape, to do advocacy, so many organizations, so many platforms, so many initiatives, so many NGOs. It was much easier back then, but I must confess that we were not even knowledgeable enough to understand. So when the network was set up in 2003, it was not our idea. It was the idea of a Dutch organization called Milieucontact, Oost-Europa. So the Dutch already knew that we will need this kind of cooperation when we will be EU members. So that's why I think, and I keep thinking, that your timing of this event is so perfect, because you already know that by the time you get to the EU, hopefully very soon, then you will need this knowledge. So basically, there were 3 reasons why we put the whole network together: to learn the whole EU machinery, how it works, whom to go to and whom to ask, where to write things. The second is to coordinate, because it always sounds stupid if a Czech organization says yes, the Slovak says no, the Hungarian says yes again, to have some platform. And the third one is that to elevate the voice, because if you go as one organization, as a Slovak, a Czech, Hungarian, whatever, Spanish even, to the Commission, that's okay, that's one. But when you say that, hey, we are representing 12 EU member states, 12 NGOs, or in your or EB's case, more than 100, I mean, it's obvious that it's having its weight, and it has many advantages. The very practical advantage, which I don't want to exaggerate, but I think it's also important, is that funding. When you apply for funding as an NGO, the Commission says, oh my God, if I am if I want to have opinions from 12 member states, I have to contact either 12 NGOs or this one, only this one. And then I can get input from 12 countries. Funding is more likely to receive if you're channeling opinion.
Shaba, thank you so much, in particular mentioning the funding. Since we have no more hands, I will need to wrap up this event today, and be my key conclusion. Now we have Mykola Šlapak. Mykola, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Andrei, and thank you to all the presenters. Very interesting was to hear. My question was like, it slightly was touched already, but does that mean that for Ukrainian NGOs, it is now more important to like different kinds of networks, like Can Europe or like similar kinds of networks, not only covering Ukrainian NGOs, but like more active and more broader participation in international or regional networks to be more effective in this area? Thanks.
Maybe Shaba or Valeria wants to reply. I don't know. Mykola, can you rephrase your question? Valeria, you are ready. Okay, good.
Yeah, can I just say one thing that is very concerning that I've noticed recently? It's more difficult to do advocacy with other green networks and organizations represented in Brussels, because now they started to talk about conflicting priorities of the European Union. So they say that helping Ukraine diverges money from the climate movement and from the climate objectives, and they're very, very dedicated to the idea of strong advocacy towards the new European Commission when it comes to and European Parliament and Council when it comes to composing new MFF, multi-annual, multi-financial framework. So I would look into how to build message box with environmental organizations now in Brussels, considering their growing concern that militarization and defense priorities of the European Union take money from their environmental goals and from generally keeping the European Green Deal high on the agenda. Because I was in the room when those network organizations were debating on this topic, and we more and more diverge as environmental organizations who are supporting defense expenditures in the European Union. We more and more diverge on this particular topic. So that's just food for thought. We need to think how to talk about them, how to talk about this with them, because for now we're in cold, I would say, cold war with some of them already in Brussels.
Thank you, Valeria. I may only add when relating to the question by Mykola Šlapak that a Ukrainian civil society organization joining any EU-wide or EU-level network, whether it's CAN or EEB or Justice and Environment, may feel disappointed by the fact that it's not the majority. The whole agenda discussed or on the table is about the EU level issues. It's not about Ukraine. I mean, and it should not be, in my view. But for the Ukrainian NGOs, they might feel at this point today that this is too far. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we getting all of these emails? Why are we discussing environmental emissions directive revision? Why are we so keen on nature restoration law? However, I think there are several, let's say, benefits for the Ukrainian NGOs to get familiar with the existing environmental networks and the EU processes in order to be able first to pursue their environmental agenda, not Ukrainian agenda, but environmental agenda, whether it's forests, whether it's climate change, whether it's adaptation, whether it's, I don't know, CO2 storage, whatever it is, because then it doesn't matter. Secondly, I think it will be more increasingly important. I mean, the EU is becoming more and more important for Ukraine in terms of setting the standards, the legislation, the money. The Ukraine facility is a good example. So I think having, and lastly, the money. I think having a proper dialogue with the Parliament, with the Commission, well, with the Council it's almost impossible, but you can speak with the member states. But by having this dialogue, you can have a big impact on what are the new funding opportunities open to the Ukrainian NGOs. Because otherwise, somebody in Brussels will just decide this is a new call for proposals, and there will be no relevance for what you think should be in as a priority or as a focus area in the relevant call of proposals. Now, I hope this is okay, Mykola, with you. Now I'm coming to my very brief conclusions. I think my key conclusion for today is the following. Yesterday and the day before yesterday, our government had an explanatory session with the European Commission within the Chapter 27, the future Chapter 27 of the EU-Ukraine accession negotiations. And the Chapter 27 is about environment and climate change. It used to be Chapter 22, Shaba, when you were joining the EU. But now it's 27 because there are more chapters now, 35. Now, so for 2 days, I've been listening to this explanatory session. And my key impression was, it's a huge challenge for our government to go through this process. The acquis, the environmental and climate change acquis of the European Union is extremely, extremely complex. There will be thousands of different pages and legal rules, norms to be understood, to be applied in Ukraine. And today, after I heard what Patricia said, what Shaba said, what Valeria is explaining to us, that working with the EU bubble is not easier. Trying to get your voice heard with the Parliament, with the Commission, with the member states, it will not be easier for our civil society. So we need to prepare to get knowledge, to make colleagues, to try to make use of the capacity that is already there, like with the CE Bank Watch or Justice and Environment, etc., etc., etc. Whether you are going to work on implementation right now on any single regulation or directive of the EU, or whether you want to be more effective in communicating with the Commission, Parliament, or the Council. So again, thank you very much, Shaba and Valeria, for being with us today, and everybody, and Tamara, for your important remarks on civil society, EU-Ukraine Civil Society Forum. And thank you for all participants and the Renaissance Foundation for supporting this event. I am sure there will be more and more such awareness raising and capacity building events that we Ukrainian NGOs need, I believe, desperately. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good luck.
Thank you, Andrei. Thank you, everyone. Bye.